They are exhibitions for selling paintings. The average price is $100,000. Necessary item to be a watercolorist, and that's being able to draw. If you can't draw, you can't paint.
Laurin is America's most celebrated still life painter. Laurin's meticulous detail paintings have earned him numerous accolades and inspired countless artists to push the boundaries of what is possible with watercolor. From his exquisite renderings of glassware, still lifes, silverware, Laurin's work is a testament to power of observation, skill, and his artistic vision. Would you suggest that making sure that you have enough drawing skills before you attempt to paint?
I was an architect for 50 years. I decided when I was age 12 that I wanted to be an architect, and I could draw then. So my drawing skills come from my architecture. There is this misconception that watercolor is so difficult. And, you know, watercolor, like printing and etching, is very process oriented.
Is there any tips you want to give people who are thinking early watercolors or beginners and other things?
If you really want to be a really good artist, go take 5 workshops or 6 workshops over the next year and find subject matter that you want to paint and paint well. I have not had a drawing board in 42 years when I retired. I always carried a sketchbook with me everywhere I went. Don't buy a $2 brush if you really want to paint a $1,000 painting. Paint in watercolor are the friendliest, nicest, most sharing group of people in the world.
Picture this, a watercolor painting so lifelike, you reach out to touch the condensation on the glass, only to realize it's just a pigment on paper. That's the magic of Laurin McCracken, the master of hyperrealistic watercolor. So, Laurin is America's most celebrated still life painter. So, welcome back to Wet on Wet podcast, everyone. Today we have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Laurin McCracken, an artist whose impact on the watercolor community is undeniably true. Laurin's meticulous detail paintings have earned him numerous accolades and inspired countless artists to push their boundaries of what is possible with watercolor. From his exquisite renderings of glassware, still lifes, silverware, Laurin's work is a testament to power of observation, skill, and his artistic vision. What truly fascinating is Laurin combines many of the skill he has honed as an architect, along with his background in history, drawing, photography, as well as his many visits to some of the world's leading museums. So, unlike his painting has been showcased internationally, including numerous exhibitions in China, and are held in permanent collections around the world. To list some of the places or awards he has been, he is a member of American Watercolor Society, National Watercolor Society, Transparent Watercolor Society, Watercolor USA Honor Society, Rocky Mountain Water Media, Louisiana Water Society, Philadelphia Watercolor, Allied Artists of America. Welcome to Wet on Wet. We are so excited to have you, Laurin.
Thank you. That was a very generous introduction. I appreciate that. I think watercolor is just one of the most wonderful mediums that ever came along. I was an architect for 50 years. I decided when I was age 12 that I wanted to be an architect, and I could draw then. So my drawing skills come from my architecture. But I did, while I was in architecture school, I didn't take a watercolor class. They offered a printing class, and I thought that was just more interesting. So all of my professional career, I wanted to know how to watercolor, but because I always said that architects should be watercolorists, you know. And so at age 60, I took a watercolor class and found out that I could do it, and I could do it with some facility. And it has been a great second career for me. You know, I'm 82 years old, and I've had the opportunity to live life all over again, and continue to travel around the world. And one of the great things, Sunil, you know this as well as anybody, is that the watercolor world, those of us around the world that paint in watercolor, are the friendliest, nicest, most sharing group of people in the world. I mean, you stop any watercolorist and ask them, boy, I really admire your backgrounds. Wish I could do that. They will stop and say, oh, well, let me show you how. It's not that difficult, right?
It's a very interesting thing, right? It's like, I don't know why watercolor artists are so eager to share watercolor. I don't know why. It's very true now that you've mentioned it.
I think part of that, Sunil, is that there is this misconception that watercolor is so difficult.
Yeah.
And, watercolor, like printing and etching, is very process oriented. And the parallel I draw is that anybody can go out and walk into an art material store and buy the material and go home. They got bad brushes, they got bad paint, they bought cheap paper, and they try to do it, and it's a big catastrophe. So everybody says, oh, it's just too difficult, I can't do it. But nobody would go out and go to a printing store and buy a piece of copper, some asphaltum, some etching needles, and some sulfuric acid and try to make an etching without some instruction.
Sure.
And that's the big difference. If you get some instruction, you'll know how to do it. I have a wonderful nephew who is a neurosurgeon. He is just a masterful surgeon. One of his specialties is newborn and unborn. He can operate on the brains of unborn infants and correct brain problems before they're even born. I mean, it's just a miracle. So I asked him. I said, "Is neurosurgery difficult?" He said, "No, Uncle Laurin, it's not difficult." I said, "Why do you say that?" It's because I know what I'm doing. And so I think all of those people that say that watercolor is so difficult, they do that because they have not had the proper instruction. And one of the problems we know today around the world, there's not very many classes on beginning watercolor. All of us want to teach intermediates, we want to take our art to the next level, and so we do that by teaching. But we've got to have some more fundamental classes on how to load a brush, how to choose a brush, what are the criteria for choosing a brush.
Yep.
Those are the things that everybody needs to know, but not easy to come by. And so I think that has generated among all of us a willingness to help you because we know how difficult it is to get that information.
I mean, I could go so many different ways. First question I wanted to ask is why watercolors? So, were you inspired as somebody, or why watercolor in the first place? You could have easily told gouache or something else.
Well, as I said, in almost every architectural school at your
Yeah.
third or fourth year, you take a watercolor class.
Yeah.
And I ended up not being able to take a watercolor class. So I had always wanted to. And then I was living in Alexandria, Virginia, and working in downtown Washington, D.C. And on the Potomac River, next to Alexandria, is an old torpedo factory. They made torpedoes in the First and Second World War. Now it's art galleries and studios, and they have a little school there. And I used to go down on weekends, and I would see these beautiful watercolors, and so I would always ask, "Where did you learn how to paint like this?"
Sure.
And almost everybody would say, well, there's a lady that teaches in the school here. Her name is Gwen Bragg, and she's a specialist in beginning and intermediate teaching. And so I signed up to take her class. It took 18 months for me to get in her class because she's so popular. I think somebody had to die to make a space for me. So I was able to take 2 Sunday evening 6-week classes. So 2 hours, that's 24 hours of instruction. And at the end of those 2 sessions, I could paint like this.
Yeah.
Because she was such a
Not
good
like
teacher.
that, but yeah.
And of course I had let's talk for a minute about the other necessary item to be a watercolorist, and that's being able to draw. If you can't draw, you can't paint, because we see so many people painting horses and painting dogs, but they don't know how to draw dogs.
Yeah.
They don't know the anatomy of dogs, and so the end painting looks terrible because it doesn't look like their Fido, you know. But had they taken the time to learn some fundamentals in drawing, then their watercolors will end up being that much better.
One of the things is similar is I am a mechanical engineer by profession, so
Oh,
I do watercolor on
absolutely.
the side.
Yeah.
So for me, drawing is essential. Especially I came from a place when there was still hand drawing on a draft table. So
Same way. Same way.
so I had to learn how to draw, and I was always really well at drawing in college. I used to help a lot of other people how to draw and other things. It came naturally. I could visualize 3D, and I feel now that we are talking about it, one of my things I think about is like I don't think drawing is a difficult thing for me. So I can look at something, I can draw first, and then the technique can improve over a period of time. But it's very true.
But for many, many people, though, don't have that background and they struggle. And you can see that in their painting.
Yes, that's right.
You
Yeah.
know, the heads won't be correct, the fingers won't be in the right places, you know, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah. So would you suggest that making sure that you have enough drawing skills before you attempt to paint?
Yes.
Yeah.
I encourage anybody that wants to be a watercolorist. I mean, there's some wonderful books out there, Drawing on the Left-Hand Side of the Brain. I mean, fundamental instruction books. Go through 2 or 3 of those until you can connect the end of your pencil to your eyeball and bypass your brain,
That's right. Yeah.
right? You know, because I've taught lots and lots of children to draw, and it's actually really, really easy. You take a mug, you know, the typical mug, and you turn it where you can't see that thing and set it down in front of 12 children and ask them to draw it. How will they all draw it? They know it's a mug. They'll draw it with the handle. And I'll say, now look at the mug and look at your drawing. Is it the same? And they say, no.
Yeah.
And I said, now draw the mug. And then they'll draw it by looking at the mug and forgetting what they know a mug looks like. And then you're off and rolling.
I mean, while we are on this subject, is there any common themes you see students messing about other than, is that mainly the drawing? Because there's no point going forward if they do the drawing wrong.
Yes, I would say that, I think that, as I said, watercolor is a very technique-driven medium.
Yeah.
And once they get some drawing skills, they don't know the technical skills of watercolor. And one of the key ones is how to load a brush. Because most people go in, they've got dried pans or even dried palettes. And they go in and they wet their brush and they dab at the paint, and all they're getting is a little bit of paint on the end of the brush, but the brush is full of water because somebody had told them you got to wet your brush first. And so then they put it on the paper, and all that water gushes through that small amount of paint, and it looks so pale. You know, you thought you were painting with phthalo blue and it was going to be bold, and all of a sudden it looks like cerulean, you know, because they don't know that the paint has to get into the belly of the brush in order for you to use it properly. Just fundamentals like that. And it could make all the difference in the world in the quality of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just understanding what mistakes not to do in the initial stages is more important than learning something, right?
Absolutely.
Take 1 or 2 classes.
But, you know, on the other hand, the more you take risk and the more you paint, the more you'll learn. I mean, there's only one way to learn how to watercolor. That's to watercolor. You know, paint 1,000 paintings and then paint a real painting.
I mean, all true. I mean, fantastic. Lauren, maybe we can just start with a little bit about your upbringing, where you grew up, just to know a little about more about you, what sort of childhood. Yeah, you seem to be a very positive, happy person.
Oh, I am. I grew up in very, very small towns in Mississippi. I mean, towns of 2,000 people to 20,000 people. And my father was a blue collar worker. He worked in automobile dealerships, but he was the parts manager. And, he wore a uniform coat that had Ford Motor Company on it. And so we didn't have much money. And so, but in my household, there was always a stack of a ream of typing paper and pencils for me.
Sure.
Now, I will add one thing to this story is that when I was 6 years old, I had polio. And so I was confined to a single room, quarantined until I had to learn how to walk again and all that. But in quarantine, anything that you've had in that room, once they take it out, they burn it. So the nurses said, "Oh, you can bring Laurin toys and he can play with them in the room. But then after they leave, we will burn them." Well, we hardly afford toys at Christmas. So we didn't have money to burn toys. So my mother, a smart lady that she was, went and bought a ream of typing paper and two number 2 pencils and brought them to me in my hospital bed, and I started drawing cowboys and Indians. That's what we went to on Saturday to see the cowboy movies. And so I would draw Tom Mix and Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and all that, and that's how I taught myself to draw.
Talking about cowboys, just before talking to you, I recorded a episode with Don Weller. I don't know whether you're aware of his work. He does a lot of Western
Oh,
themed
wow.
drawings,
Uh-huh.
lots and lots of horses and cowboys. He's
Wow.
very prolific. Don Weller. He's again, it was real fun. But again, talking about anatomy, his anatomy is like extremely strong when you're looking at horses and people and other things. And
Exactly.
then he experiments with watercolors and other things.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people draw horses and put the eyes in the wrong place
Yeah.
because they really never looked at a horse. They think they know what a horse looks like. Same thing with draw. Well, one of the most famous drawings by anybody and the famous watercolors was Albrecht Dürer's rabbit.
Yeah.
And you can tell that Dürer studied that dead rabbit for a long time and then meticulously drew it and then meticulously painted it. And if there's ever a goal, an object by which everybody should know and put up as a goal for quality of watercolor, I would say it's Dürer's rabbit.
One of the first thing when you click watercolor painting, old watercolor painting, that's the first painting
That's right.
which
It's
comes
one of the
up.
first
And
things
then
that come
also,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you look at some landscape, then there's a Constable, Turner, those paintings come up. But when you talk about still life,
Yes.
those are the kind of things. Why still life, Lauren? So there could be a thousand different ways coming as an architect. Why still life?
Well, when I first started to learn to paint from Gwen Bragg in Alexandria, my mother was an English teacher, and you would have to write a short story, right, in the 10th grade. And so every 10th grade teacher, everybody that tells the class, write a one-page short story. And the answer is from the class is, what do I write about? And so the classic answer is write about what you know. Write about your toys, your playmates, all that. So I wanted to really be good at watercolor. My view is that if I'm going to take the time to do anything, I'm going to take the time to do it well. And so growing up in Mississippi, where magnolias, like the one behind me here, are everywhere, I started painting magnolias, and it was great exercise because it taught you to do curves, it taught you to be fine edges, light, shadow. anytime you're painting a floral, it's a great exercise. And so, and living in Mississippi, I had access to a lot of, at the time I was living in Washington. Washington has a lot of magnolias. So I'd sneak around in the night and clip magnolias off of people's trees and then set them up in a still life and start painting them. And they got into shows. You know, the first show I ever entered was Tennessee Watercolor Society, and I sent two paintings. One was an iris, and one was a very bright yellow daylily. They
Do you
both
remember
got,
how old were you?
oh, well, I'm 63 years old at this time.
Oh, okay. It's
This
just
is,
recent. Okay.
but I've never entered a show. I mean,
Sure.
I don't know if I'm good or whether I'm bad, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
so they both got in the show, and they jointly won first prize. The
Wow.
juror said they were equally good, and he couldn't make up his mind, so he gave the prize to both paintings. So,
So,
you know, that just is an illustration of what you can do if you
Yeah.
put your mind to it.
but also I bet is like your discipline comes from working as an architect for
Yes.
a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't imagine me in my early teens having the patience to do
No.
what I do right
Oh,
now.
no. I would agree. But the other footnote I want to add, because I don't want my friends out there to think about that I drew at all those years. I was the head of marketing.
Sure.
I have not had a drawing board in 42 years when I retired. So, but I always carried a sketchbook with me everywhere I went. I remember being down on Kyushu on the southern island of Japan. I'm there getting work for a big architectural firm, and I'm having to sit in the back and wait till it's my time to present. And so in front of me, there are 30 railway engineers and facing the other way. And so I knew I was going to have to be there 30 minutes. So I just drew the backs of their heads,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm in a really boring meeting in London. And so what do? I draw the glasses on the table and the coffee cups. There's always something there to draw.
Sure. No, I completely agree. And is it fair to assume that you started watercolor just after your retirement, or did you retire?
No,
thinking
that's
that
what I
you
say.
would
At age 60, living in Washington, I started taking these classes, and that's when I started watercoloring. I watercolored weekends and nights for the next 10 to 12 years, and then, well, I've been painting now 20 years, but I've only been retired about 15 years. But now I paint pretty much every day. If I'm in the middle of a painting, I'm going to paint 6 to 8 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And you don't mind? Do you just listen to
It's just so
something
much
while you're
fun.
doing, or just
No,
do you
just
listen to some music, or
sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes,
Yeah.
if you're painting the aluminum foil around the apples behind me, you have to concentrate a lot because there's no pattern. Nothing repeats itself. Everything is unique. Painting the apples is a piece of cake. I put on music when I paint the apples, but I have to concentrate so hard on the aluminum foil that I can't have the music bothering me.
I mean, I encourage viewers to just go zoom in the paintings. I mean, it's breathtaking to see your painting just as it, but if you zoom in on certain, I was looking for some high definition images of yours, and just zooming in, you just get dizzy. The amount of different tones of each color just on trying to get on the
Well,
painting.
that's kind of you say. Well, one of the things I would comment on, and it is one of the things that's fundamental to that's taught to architects, in that buildings from a long distance have a unique shape, and let's use the Pantheon in Rome on the just off of the Piazza Novano there. It has a very unique shape, and it has this wonderful dome. But as approach it, the dome disappears and the columns become the most important thing. Then you walk up the stairs and the flutes in the columns become in focus, and the Corinthian capitals of the columns come in focus, and then the door comes in focus. The closer you get, the more detail you get to see and enjoy. And that's the joy of painting the way I do it. I'm just as happy as with the composition of those tulips and that magnolia from 15 feet away. But I want that the closer you get to it, it evolves and you see more things and more things and more things as you get to it.
So do you usually set up a still life yourself, the
Yes.
setting, and then do you just take a photo, or do you prefer doing it live?
Now, if you're painting a magnolia, it's not going to last but a
Yeah.
day. I mean, a magnolia is essentially a daylily, and the second day it's going to turn brown. So you've got to capture it at that moment you want to paint it. And so, like the apples here, I probably took 30 photographs,
Okay.
turning them, changing the foil, getting a better reflection and all that. And while you're working with it, because you're not living inside the lens, you really can't see what it is. Until you get it on your screen, you're not going to know exactly what it is. And even once I get it on the screen, I'm going to say, oh, I put that piece too high, that's distracting, so I'll just draw it down some. I'll just pull that whole piece down. So, I'm a slave to the drawing as a definition of the objects, but I'm not a slave to the drawing to make the right composition.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Can we talk a little more about composition, especially in a still life? Composition and obviously light. We could briefly touch into light as well. But composition, for any other artist, composition is important, but it's especially more important, I would say, for a still life. How do you think about composition? What goes in your head when you're setting up a still life?
A number of things. Now, I will have to admit, after having 60-something years of drawing experience and now 20 years of painting experience, I do it very intuitively.
Okay.
It's just in my head. The great example I can offer you is not in watercolor but in photography. When Ansel Adams was on the top of that mountain and the sun was going down, it got too dark to shoot, so he got in his Cadillac station wagon and was coming down the hill, and he looks out and he sees the setting sun hitting all of those gravestones and those houses out there. He stops his car, he jumps up on the car, puts out his tripod, pulls out his big camera, shoves the plate in and takes the photograph. He doesn't have time to think about it. And the second shot he shot, the sun had gone away and the gravestones, and it's called Moonrise at San Hernandez. It's one of the most famous photographs in the world. It is a perfect composition. He knew how to position the camera, how to focus it so fast. He was intuitive. He didn't have to think about it.
Sure.
So if you've been painting and drawing as long as I have, sure, I understand thirds, dividing, there's a great Dutch painter of landscapes and seascapes, and everything he's done is in thirds. And so just looking at half a dozen of his paintings, you can understand the thirds and where those cross, that's where the interest should be. Well, I can intuit that. The other one is a triangle, not an isosceles triangle, a perfect triangle, but a wonky triangle, like those flowers with the magnolia back up there.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be static. You don't want it to be so perfectly aligned that it's static, and people need to be drawn to it. So you create, 9 times out of 10, you enter a painting at the bottom. So you need to grab that viewer at the bottom and take them up into the painting and turn them around and And they will see some things the first time they look at your painting. They will see different things because your eye is picked up and carried again in that painting, and they'll see more things, and then they'll see more things. If you're in a museum and you see somebody walk up to a painting and just say, huh, and walk away, you know they don't understand art. But if they walk up to a really fabulous painting and they stand there and then they get involved in it, then that's a person that understands art, and it's an artist that captured the viewer's attention. And that's what we call composition.
Composition. So is there any tips you want to give people who are thinking early watercolors or beginners and other things? How to think about composition?
I think the most important thing that I tell my workshop early participants is buy better quality products. You know,
Okay.
if don't buy a $2 brush if you really want to paint a $1,000 painting. You know, and use you don't have to spend $1 million, you know, but on the other hand, you don't have to have 100 brushes either. If you've only got 3 really good brushes, you know, a 2, a 4, and an 8, you can probably paint anything I paint, and then get really good, you know, Daniel Smith or M. Graham or any of the really good paints. Don't buy 25-cent or $1 a tube paint, and then get the best paper that's out there. And there are only a handful of really, really good papers out there. And you know, sure, when you tell a beginning watercolorist that the full sheet 640 gram soft press Fabriano Artistico that I use, if you buy it retail and you buy it 1 sheet at a time, it's $20. And that's a lot of money for anybody to start off. So don't buy it that way. Buy it in a 5-sheet pack when Blick has it on sale, and it's less than $10 a sheet. And don't paint full sheets. Cut it into quarters. And so all of a sudden you can do 40 paintings with that. But
So while no, sorry, go ahead.
but you're using the best paper that's in the business.
Yeah. So in terms of paper, pigment, brush, if you had to buy the best, would you put paper first or the pigment and the brush first? Well,
They're all equal.
they're all equal. So you wouldn't consider. Okay. So
You can't have a great brush and great paint and try to paint on terrible paper. You can't paint watercolor on the finest Japanese mulberry paper because it's not made for watercolor.
Yeah. Okay. So you think paper, pigment, brush all equal,
All
33%.
equal. Absolutely.
All equal. So you want to buy the best possible.
Absolutely.
Buy it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about different subjects, so is there any preferred brushes you use? Anything you like?
I only use Escoda brushes.
Escoda brushes. Okay.
Because and the reason I use them is because they're one of the few of the last handmade brushes. And,
That's correct.
And each brush has a soul that they got from that member of the Escoda family who sat there, and it takes about 8 years to learn how to make a brush because you have to have the right number of hairs in the brush. Well, you don't count them, you feel them.
Yeah.
So I'm an Escoda ambassador. There are about 8 or 9 of us in the world, and I promote their products. And sure, they supply me with, but they also supply me with some of their best brushes that I can give to people in my classes, because in every class of 15 people, there's going to be 2 people in that class that could be really good watercolorists, but they're fighting that brush. They've got a brush that was their aunt used for 10 years, and they inherited, and they're fighting and so you just give them a
Yeah.
a really good middle of the line Escoda brush, not a $200 brush, but
Yeah.
a $12, $15 brush. All of a sudden their world lights up because
Yeah.
everything they try to do works, right?
Yeah. So, do you remember what your brush, what name of your brush? They have a different types of brushes. Do you remember? Just for people in case they want to pick up those brushes.
Uh,
So, but you use
it'll come
natural
to me.
hair or
Yeah.
synthetic?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, they have the finest brushes that they make are, of course, Kolinsky Sable,
Polanski sables, yeah.
but Kolinsky is becoming very, very hard to get these days. The China's
Yeah.
in charge of that market now, and you never know what you're getting. So
Yeah.
to get a really good set of Escoda of
Yeah.
those is $1,200, $1,500,
Yeah. But
and
they hold their. I've got few Escoro brushes. I've been painting for like 5, 6 years,
uh-huh.
and they still feel the same quality what I bought 5, 6 years ago.
Oh yeah,
They're
yeah.
yeah, they
But
hold their.
yeah, and it'll come. They have a new brush that's a blend of synthetic and real hair, whose
Yeah.
name it'll come to me in a minute. And that's what I has a blue handle, and that's
Yeah.
exclusively what I paint with. Uh,
Okay.
there is a wonderful line that what I get from Escoda to give to my students is what's called versatile,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's a really really good brush. It's
Yeah.
a little stiff for me, so I use the other one because it has a little bit more flexibility. But if you're
Yeah.
an intermediate painter, the versatile is just a
Yeah.
ideal for it because it's a synthetic brush, and one of
Mhm.
the problems with synthetic brushes is that most of the synthetic hairs are just extruded and they're
Yeah.
perfectly smooth. And
Yeah.
so you load your brush and you touch the paper and everything rushes out onto your paper unless you're really really careful and learn it. But
Yeah.
the synthetic hairs that Escoda makes have a texture to them. It was a
Sure.
real breakthrough. They worked. It took 7 years to develop this hair, and so these versatiles, the the flow is more controlled off out of the brush, and so that's what if people have cheap brushes, I give them versatile brushes,
Yeah.
and it makes a big difference
Yeah.
in the way
They
they
increase
work.
the surface area so that the pigment can settle down. I mean, that's same approach they use, especially when you're gluing something together. You
Yes.
want to have as many surface area as possible.
Yes,
Uh, do
and
you,
and you want to be sure that you have a paper that has not only body sizing in it but
mhm.
surface sizing in it, or it
Yeah.
won't take the paint properly.
Yeah. So we talked about brush. You said Fabriano. Is there any other paper you use or
Well,
Arches or
I use Fabriano 300-pound
yeah,
soft press,
soft
and
press paper?
so nobody else makes a soft press paper. So
Yeah.
I use nothing
Partial
but
to.
Fabriano, and
Okay.
I buy it in the imperial size sheets. I
Sure.
typically paint uh, the the, uh, the apples in the back is a half sheet.
Yeah.
The magnolias in the background are actually from an elephant sheet. It's
Sure.
bigger than a full sheet.
Sure.
So one of the things to keep in mind if you're going to be an artist and you're going to paint for money, you want to be a professional artist, which means
Sure.
you want to earn money from what you do, is the size of the painting makes a huge difference. Galleries sell the painting on a square inch basis. You can walk into a gallery and carry a painting, and the gallery owner will immediately see how big it is. And if they're
Yeah.
interested, and you say, "How much can you sell this for?" they can tell you just like that because they know a painting of high quality of that size, they know how much they can sell it for.
Yeah. Uh, Also, do you want to just interested to know your thoughts on how to price it? So one of the when you look at Reddit or other places, one of the most commonly asked question is, how do you price it? Do you price it based on how many hours you spend,
No,
or no?
no, it's priced by what the market will bear.
Okay.
I'll tell you a story. There was a lady that was in one of my classes, and she wanted to sell her paintings. And she was from a small town out in Kansas, and no, Missouri, out in Missouri. And she said, I can't get more than $30 for my painting. And I said, you're right. That small town you live in, that's the standard. It doesn't matter if you've got $1,000 painting. The locals are not going to recognize it as $1,000 painting. So they will only want to pay. But I said, you live 110 miles from Kansas City, who has one of the best art markets in the central part of the United States. That same painting could sell for $200 in Kansas City. She said, oh, I can't drive that far. And I said, then you're cursed with having to sell your paintings for $30, because if you want to sell it for more, you have to go where the market is paying more. And that's why if you can get we have a local painter here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area named Rance Jones. Mm-hmm. Rance paints beautifully. He's a realist far and above what I do. And he got in the Forum Gallery in New York. The top 5 galleries, anybody who names the top 5 galleries in the New York, Forum will be included in that. His paintings sell for $30,000 because that's what the Forum Gallery gets for their watercolor paintings.
Sure.
Now, I sell my paintings for $12 to $15 to $20,000, but I don't have a New York gallery.
Sure.
If Dean Mitchell is the best watercolorist in the United States. And he's in like 7 or 8 galleries, and the galleries beg him for his paintings. And so Dean's a good friend of mine, and he told me he got in this gallery out in the West, and every time he sent them 4 new paintings, he raised the price. And so the gallery owner would call him and say, Dean, we'll never sell those paintings. That's much too expensive. He just says, put them on the wall. 2 weeks later, they call, Dean, can I have some more paintings? First of all, you have to be really good at what you do. Sure. You can't just want to sell your paintings. The paintings have to be good enough to create a demand. You also have to know what your area of influence is and what they buy. I don't sell any paintings in Fort Worth because this is a cow town. They want pictures of longhorn cattle and bluebonnets on the Texas prairie. That's not what I paint. So if I'm selling my paintings, I have to take them to other cities, or I have to sell them on the internet.
Yeah, but that's an excellent advice. Knowing where to sell the painting is probably more important than what you paint and other things.
Oh, absolutely. If I wanted to paint bluebonnets and I wanted to paint longhorn steers, I could be in 4 galleries here, but they don't interest me. So I have to work harder. That's why I have to have a car big enough to put 16 or 18 paintings to take to a gallery.
Yep. Well, while we're talking about that thing, do you research on what the paintings need to be, or do you have a pulse on what's happening, or you just pick a subject which you like? You got enough experience now that you tend to recognize your need.
It's a combination of both. I know what the people are in. I'm really only in one gallery. It's in Oxford, Mississippi, which is where the University of Mississippi is. They have a really great football team. Yeah. And so I have a deal with this gallery. Every other year, I am the featured artist in that gallery, and he promises me there will be 2 football games during the time. If Ole Miss wins, we sell paintings. If Ole Miss loses, we don't sell anything. 2 years ago, we didn't sell a painting. This year, I sold 7 paintings in the first day because they won the football game that day. I mean, it's crazy, but it has almost nothing to do with your art.
So it's
It's the
people's sentiment, the
psychology
mood
of
they are
where
in.
you are, and there are very, very wealthy people that live in Oxford
Yeah.
and fly their own airplanes into the football game. So to buy a $12,000 painting is like buying another watch for them. It's not an important thing, but it's really important to sell 7 paintings.
Absolutely. No, but fantastic. Because the watercolor scene in America has been very, very mature right now. There's a lot of
Yes.
really, really great artists.
Yes.
And also now there's a boom especially with the social media, you see
Yes.
artists from all over the world, which you wouldn't see on a watercolor magazine these days. Like people from Uruguay and Australia has a strong watercolor scene, and then you're seeing people from Asia and other places. There's a lot of artists right now, and they
Huge,
look
huge growing market in South America right now.
South America. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Uruguay. There's Alvaro Castigny. I think he is quite
Absolutely.
popular.
Yeah.
So he's yeah. So
And a lot
that
of
is
people like Alvaro are starting schools down there,
yeah,
and they have
yeah,
200 students, 300 students. It's really fabulous.
yeah. Yes. Now, I took a week's class with Alvaro in 2013, uh, and then that's how my watercolor journey began. So
Uh-huh.
I was always fascinated. I took a week's class, as you said, having that first initial classes to make sure you understand the right fundamentals. I
Absolutely.
think is important.
Well, and then I'm a big fan of demo paintings and particularly workshops. Uh, you know, if you really want to be a really good artist, go take 5 workshops or 6 workshops over the next year and go to a landscape workshop, go to a portrait workshop, go to a plein air workshop, do a still life where, come to one of my classes, and then determine what fits you best.
Yeah.
Where are you most comfortable, and
Yeah.
where do you get the most satisfaction? If it's work, then you're doing the wrong one.
Yeah.
If it's enjoyment, then your painting will be better. You will work harder on it.
Yeah.
But if you just got to get it done because it's got to be in that show, I got to send it off to the Alabama Watercolor Society, it's probably not going to get in the show. And if it gets in, it's not going to win an award because you fought it the whole way. But if you can go into it, like all the paintings you see behind me, all of the paintings you see behind me, I just chose because I like the subject.
Sure.
And I painted them for the sheer joy of painting them. Now, how I make money in selling is I do commissions.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that for a few minutes? Because
Yeah.
I think
Of course. Yeah.
because most
Absolutely.
people hate commissions. They don't like somebody telling them what to paint and all that, but they're just doing it the wrong way. So what I do is I advertise in magazines. I take half-page things and I said, if you have a collection like these objects or other objects, I can paint you a still life of you. And in the United States, particularly right now, like myself, a lot of people are getting older and they have collections of silver and all things they've collected that their children don't want at all. So I get called by a man in St. Louis, Missouri, and he has 3 collections that he wants me to come look at. So
Yeah.
he sends me an airplane ticket. I go to St. Louis. He picks me up at the airport. We go to his house. I look at 3 collections. He has a collection of silver service pictures and things like that had belonged to his wife's mother. And then she has a collection of crystal perfume bottles, maybe 20 of them. They're just spectacular. And then he has a collection of pocket flask, whiskey
Yeah.
containers. Some are leather, some are etched metal. I mean, they're just,
Yeah.
so I take photographs of all of them. And then by that time, we're friends. By that time, we go to dinner. I stay over at their house. The next morning we have a long, late breakfast and talk about art. And they take me to the airport, and I come home. And then I choose two photographs out of each of those collections that I say I believe will make a good watercolor.
Yeah.
And they choose the image. Now, in this particular case, they decided that they really only wanted the silver that had been her mother's. They said they'll come back to me in 2 years and do one of the others.
Yeah.
So that I'm laying out future work doing this.
Sure.
Typically, I only photograph one still life, but I may take 100 photographs.
Yeah.
And so I have to take the right light. I have to take black cloth to black out the windows. I mean, I have a suitcase, but the suitcase is mostly things, a tripod for the light and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very portable. It'll all go on in one suitcase with my clothes. And so during the process of the painting, now they've chosen the painting, so they have a certain expectation. So once a week, I typically, every afternoon when I finish a part of a painting, I stand up on a stool and photograph it.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's a
For my own
history.
record, and later they make great articles in the art magazines. People
Sure.
want to know how I get published so much. I give them what they need, and so once every other week, I'll send them a photograph of a part of the painting that I've completed. So they're seeing the painting as it's created, and by the time I send it to them, they already love it because they've seen it be created. Nobody turns me down, and I mail it to them, and I never take money up front. I said, if you like it, send me a check. If you don't like it, send the painting back to me. I'll put it in a gallery. I'll sell it anyway, which is a good fallback position. But I've never had to do that because they were so happy to send me a check. And remember that I get more money from the commission than I could get in a gallery, and I don't have to pay the gallery 50%. So I get it all. If I sell a painting for $15,000, I get the whole $15,000. Plus, they've paid for all the expenses.
Yeah, no, but what you're saying makes so much sense. Is like it's just managing expectations
Yes.
is a challenge, right? A lot
Well,
of people.
and treating it like a business.
Yeah,
One of the things that engineers and architects make such good watercolorists is one, they can draw, and number two, they have a left side of the brain. They have an analytical side of the brain. And most watercolorists don't. When you tell them they've got to write a marketing plan, they'd say, what's that? That sounds like work. Well, it is work. But without a marketing and sales plan, you'll never make any money selling your art.
yeah. So, in terms of knowing what you know about other watercolor artists, do you think most of the people try to make money through workshops or commissions or galleries? Is there?
It's a combination of all of those, and I think that most of the people I know, Michael Holter here, and Tom Schaller, who's very, very well known, they do it all because they're supporting a family. That's their livelihood, and so they have to do it all. Now, there are a few like Rance, who's in this fabulous gallery, and Dean Mitchell, who get such a high price. Dean Mitchell's full sheets sell for $30,000 and $40,000. So he makes 6-7 figures a year. So, but he only does it from painting and selling his paintings. But they are in the right galleries, and he's in the right national and international shows. Like he started painting the West, and there are about 6 shows in the west of the United States that you have to be invited to show your work, but
Yep.
70% of the work is sold in those shows.
Yep.
There are exhibitions for selling paintings, and
Yep.
the average price is $100,000. Of course, now there are oils and watercolors and acrylics and everything, but
Yep.
the watercolors 10 years ago weren't there. Now they are as important as the oils.
Yep. I think the medium, more than the medium, I think there is a market right now for good painting.
Absolutely.
I think,
Yes.
yeah. I want to just touch on subject on you brought up creating a small ad on watercolor magazines. Do you try running ads on anything else, or is it
Oh,
always
yes.
been
Yeah. I may have misspoken. I don't put ads in watercolor magazines.
okay? Sorry,
Who reads watercolor magazines?
beginners.
Watercolorists.
Yeah, watercolorist. Yeah.
You use watercolor magazines to position yourself in the market.
Okay.
The Because what I do I'm thinking if I have one here and I don't, they're in the other room. I get my paintings published in the watercolor magazine so I can reprint them as a reprint and then put them in galleries where I have a show so people can see that I'm a published artist. It
Sure.
makes the things that are on the wall in the gallery more expensive. Where I advertise, I've advertised in a number. I've advertised in on-flight magazines where
Sure.
the magazines in first class on
Yep.
airlines.
Yep.
People have money, see it.
Yep.
I position my paintings through lifestyle magazines in certain cities. Every city of any size has two magazines. They have one that is more real estate
Yep.
oriented and car oriented and all that, but then they have a lifestyle magazine that's all about interiors and weddings and things like that. And so
Yep.
those are the ones I advertise in because those are the people that are buying paintings for their homes. And they're the people that have money because some of these magazines are expensive,
Yep.
but the ads are not expensive. Now, one of the most important magazines in the United States, this sounds really crazy, it's called Garden and Gun, and it's only in the east United States. Yeah, everybody just hears the gun, but it's a lifestyle magazine, and they have photographs and whole 10-page articles on people's gardens and the gardeners and all that. They also have advertisements for custom-made Winchester hunting rifles too that are $20,000 or $30,000. So a full-page ad in Garden and Gun is $50,000.
Yep.
That's what in pounds. That's 60,000 pounds. Well, but so you get them to run an article about you in their magazine, and they give you a $6,000 half-page ad in their magazine. I made $150,000 from that one ad because it was
This is fantastic insight, especially marketing, because I meet a lot of artists. Very few are on tune with marketing.
Exactly.
They are good at painting. They are
Absolutely.
good, but they have no idea how to place yourself. That including me, Lauren. But these are good insights to understand. Do you manage your own social media, or do you have a
I,
team to manage it?
I really don't. I'm embarrassed to say that I don't do nearly as much social media as
Yeah.
people think I do. There are two reasons there. There's a huge learning curve, and I haven't had time for the learning curve, and I sell so many paintings I don't need it.
Sure.
But I'm committed this next year.
Yeah.
I've just rewritten a new sales plan,
Yeah.
and I'm going to step up my advertising and my commission work because That's where I make the most money because that. But the second part is I want to sell prints, and the most lucrative way to do that is on social
Yeah.
media.
Social media. Yeah.
But and I'll just there one of the things I love about watercolors is there really aren't any secrets. And so
Sure.
let me tell you the way to sell paintings, prints online. And Dean Mitchell's doing it right now. You see about a half a dozen artists out there that have figured it out. Most people just take all of their paintings and put them on the internet and say, if you like one of these, let me know, I can send you a print. Well, there's nothing special about that. Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to order those. So what you do is you do it only once a quarter. You only are available, they're only available for 1 or 2 days. And you spend those 3 months with positioning ads on April the 17th and April the 18th. I'm going to sell prints of these 4 paintings. So think about, and so you do that and you present those paintings. Nothing on that social media except those 4 paintings for those 3 months. And then on that day, they've got 2 days to order those. And then they're really special.
Yep.
And then you price it for what you think the market is.
Yep.
I'm hoping it's $700 to $1,000 because that's what Dean is getting for out there. And then where most people fail is, so they've sold 30 paintings, 30 prints. So now they've got to take a week out of their time, cut all the cardboard, pack it up, wrap it up, go ship it. And so they've lost a week's worth of painting. They've lost several $1,000s worth of value of their time.
Yeah.
So you have what's called a fulfillment house. And this is what Amazon is. Amazon doesn't make anything. They're just a fulfillment house. So I have a printer up in Ohio. I buy all my framing from them, all the frames you see here. It's called American Frame. It's a fabulous framer, very affordable, great service, but they also do fabulous prints, giclée prints. And they are pros at it. And what you do is you send them the highest quality image you've got, 6 megabyte image, and they put it in their computer. And so on that day, somebody orders one of your prints, they pay you by PayPal, you send the order to American Frame, they print it that day and ship it for you, and you factored in the price of the printing and the shipping in that, and they send a letter from you that you've already printed, and they have sitting there saying that this is a qualified print by Laurin McCracken, and so they've got something to prove that that's a real Laurin McCracken, and there are all kinds of other little improvements you can make, but you didn't have to ever touch it, and you've already got the money in your hand.
Absolutely. No, it is the way to go. I think, you would do really well, Laurin, especially the quality of your work, because a lot of people talk a lot without the background of the work, right? I think you've got to have a background of work, and then you can talk, and then people listen. I'm very glad that you are making some time coming on this podcast.
Oh no, I'm so delighted that you've invited me, because I love to share these things with people, because I find oh my goodness, I thought I turned this off. My big sincere apologies. It has never bothered me to share, quote, secrets, because so few people have the will and will take the time to do it.
Yeah.
And if they do and they make money, God bless them. I think that's just fabulous. And I hope they remember where they learned it. But most of them won't. most of them will say, it's just too much work. I just want to paint.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's
but I
not
think
the
it's
way to make money in art.
yeah, especially if you are trying to make it as a business. If you
Yes,
want to paint as a hobby, yeah, then
absolutely.
go and
Absolutely.
yeah,
There's a wonderful painter here in Fort Worth,
yeah,
and he's a hobby painter, but he's got thousands of paintings this big and this big in his house.
yeah,
I don't think he's ever sold one. He's given
yeah,
some away, but
yeah,
so what are you going to do with all that?
yeah. You got to have. So, are there any tips for how do you get into galleries, Lauren?
Uh, let me tell you my view about galleries. You choose the gallery. Don't let the gallery choose you.
Okay.
Visit a lot of galleries, and if you go to a gallery uh, that you're comfortable, you walk in this gallery, it's clean.
Yeah.
Somebody greeted you as you came in. If I can help you, please let me know. But they're not hovering over you, right? They're not walking around behind you. Oh, don't you like? Let me show you this Tom Jones over here. No, you just want somebody that welcomes you to the gallery and is friendly and is available to answer questions. And then you walk around and you think, wow, my still lifes would really look good in this gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Then check the light bulbs.
Yeah.
Are all the lights on? Are a third of the lights not working? Turn around and walk out. They really don't care what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's the easiest sign. Is the floors dirty and the light bulbs are not all working, that means these people don't care about their business.
Sure.
And people don't even think about that when they go into a gallery.
Yeah.
And then you walk around and look at the price points. And if they are the same as yours, walk out of the gallery and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because you need them to be slightly higher than yours, or there's no place to grow in that gallery. You don't want to be the highest price person in that gallery, because how are you going to raise your prices over time?
Yeah.
So once you do that, then find somebody who, ideally, you find somebody who buys paintings in that gallery and get them to introduce you to the director of the gallery. Remember that the owner of the gallery is probably not the person sitting behind that desk.
Yeah.
If they're a really good business person, they're out there making money somewhere else. Now, after COVID, things changed a lot, and since they couldn't have employees in there, they were the owners of the gallery, but that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
So if you really, really get lucky, then you can have things that happened to me. I was in Franklin, Tennessee. Franklin, Tennessee is a relatively small town just south of Nashville, but it's where all the country music stars are. Lovely horse ranches, wealthy people, and a little bitty town that was built before the Civil War. The town's 250 years old. It's fabulous. So I had dinner there one night, and there was a gallery still open at 8 o'clock, and I walked in, and it was in a converted historic building, cast iron columns. They had sandblasted all the bricks, so all the paintings were there. They had cork on the floors, so it was really quiet in there. And they had beautiful, mostly oil paintings. They also had custom-made furniture in there. And I'm thinking, wow, would my watercolor, my paintings, particularly my still lifes, really be comfortable in this gallery? So I walk over to the young man who's sitting behind the counter, who I didn't know who was the owner or an employee. And I asked him if his computer he had access to the internet from his computer. And he said yes. And I said, type in Laurin McCracken, lauringallery.com. And he looks up at me and he said, "You're Laurin McCracken?" I said, "I'm Laurin McCracken." He said, "We were going to call you tomorrow and ask you, would you talk to us? We saw your work at an exhibition in downtown Nashville. And so I said, you go select 5 images out of that show and put them in your gallery. And it could be just as easy as that.
What a story. Now, I mean, yeah, I mean, everybody would love to have a story like that, but
Yes.
it's just a, yeah,
But
you
you,
got to,
but you have to be out there. You have
yeah,
to
you
be
got to,
aware,
yeah,
and you have to be able to walk into that gallery, make
yeah,
those kinds of analyses like
yeah,
that, and you have to be bold enough to walk over and stick your hand out and
yeah,
confident enough that you've got something that that man and his wife, who happened to be there standing next to him, want.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and if you don't have that intuitive sense and that
yeah,
willingness to be bold, then
yeah,
it won't work. You,
yeah,
the market is not going to come to you.
absolutely.
I don't
You
care how good
are,
you are. You
yeah,
know,
you are,
Dean Mitchell may be the best painter in the United States, but he didn't sit at home. You know,
yeah,
he's in every major show in the world that has value,
yeah,
and he's
yeah,
out there talking to the gallery owners on a regular basis.
yeah. Now, you are so full of practical advice, Lauren. Such a pleasure to talk to an artist who is not just an artist, right? So you are a whole package. I'm
Well,
so delighted.
I
Um, uh,
appreciate that, and I was hoping that's where we would go for this conversation, because I think my paintings speak for themselves. A lot
yeah,
of people know my realism, and
yeah,
do you know Angus McEwen up in Scotland? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I know him. Yeah,
yeah. Angus is a good friend of mine now over
yeah,
the years, and he and I compete not on, not on a rational basis, but we both compete on trying to find the most difficult thing to paint, because we
that's
know
right.
we're the only people that will be painting it.
Yeah. But the hyperrealism, there's only a handful of people who paint, and then especially within watercolors, even few.
Yes.
I'm sure it's a small world to know everybody. Maybe we'll just change the subject a little bit about
Sure.
frustration in terms of if you didn't get a painting right. Do you know at the early stage when the painting is not looking correct, or do you even have paintings which doesn't look good and then you have to start over?
I,
Or
I've never stopped painting a painting, and I've never thrown a painting away.
that's very interesting to hear. So how do you
Because
know?
and because I, when I because of the subject that I'm painting. Now,
Sure.
I'm not a plein air painter. I paint when I travel, but I mostly just draw when I travel
Yeah.
and take great photographs and then come back and paint in the studio. Uh,
Hmm.
and the other thing is, everybody, I'll come back to that subject, but remember, you got to, if you're going to sell painting, you've got to be painting what the public wants to buy.
Yeah.
I had a great tour in Turkey about 15 years ago, and I came back with some of the most fabulous paintable images. But nobody's buying anything from Turkey. There's nobody
Sure.
that has a positive feel about things from Turkey. They're
Sure.
beautiful. People that collect antiques and rare art do it, but there's no general market in the world for objects from Turkey. So they're just sitting there. So
Yeah.
uh, you've got to find subject matter that you want to paint and paint well, that is acceptable in the market, and that's called positioning yourself.
Sure.
That's not selling. You've got to be known to your audience through the magazines, the speeches you give, the competitions you enter, the magazine articles, the reprints, and all of that before you
Yeah.
can sell.
Yeah.
You
So
asked
this
another
could take.
question a minute ago that you asked me to do.
No, no, no. I was just fascinated when you said that you don't you complete a painting. So you start a painting
Yeah.
and then you.
Well, and that's because I've photographed it, I've thought about it so much. By the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
I've selected that image out of 150,
Yeah.
I'm married to that image. And once I spend, my drawings of these things, even at that scale, take 4 or 5 hours,
Okay.
you know, and you can't stop. You got to keep going, because the humidity in the room could change, the light could shift. You know, I do a projected image and I trace the projected image.
Sure.
But you know, if the humidity changes in the room, the projector moves. So you got to stay right with it all the time. And but by the time I've drawn it, I'm married to that image.
Yeah.
And
So there is a lot of mental preparation before you.
I'm technically proficient enough to know that I can paint it.
Yep. Uh, on an average, what sort of timelines do you look for with one painting? You said drawing about 4 or 5 hours. Let's say a quarter sheet or something like that, apple in the back on an average.
All right. It varies, of course. The
Yeah.
apples back there, conceptually, photography, drawing, and painting, 180 to 220 hours. It's not
That's
casual.
a huge. No, that's a lot of commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've done an imperial piece of lace and silver and crystal that was bought by the National Museum of China because I was invited to a show over there, and the show was in that museum, and the museum bought the painting. It took 400 hours to paint that painting.
400 hours. Wow. That's a commitment, and yeah.
Probably the shortest time that I do a painting is probably 20 hours, 30 hours. You know, like that clear glass piece and the top back there. I probably did that in 20 hours.
20 hours. Yeah.
But still, you know, most plein air painters, if they spend more than an hour on a painting, they think they're wasting their time.
Yeah.
And they are. I mean, they have to paint fast. You know,
They have to paint. I mean, yeah. So I tend to use bigger brushes. Most of my paintings are under an hour for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just you and I. We are on a completely different
of
league.
course, of course.
Yeah.
Which is good. I don't need any more competition.
Need no more competition. So, do you have any other influences or favorite artists you like or you get inspired by, or any living or dead artists?
Well, I mentioned Dean Mitchell, who is really, and those of you in your audience who don't know Dean need to look at his paintings on the
I'll
internet.
include all in the show notes. Yeah.
He has, you know, he'll only use 4 or 5 colors in a painting, but it'll just, you'll fall in love with it the second you see it. The other painter, there are several other painters that, one who's been dead for several years, Carolyn Brady, Brady. She is a realist painter, and she painted, you know, she painted the tabletop after the meal. You know, a Thanksgiving or a Christmas holiday meal. The table is a wreck, you know, but she painted every dirty spoon, every drop of spilled coffee, and everything. It's just fabulous things. The other gentleman who just passed away recently, and not very many people know, is Joseph Raphael. He's an American, but he lived in Nice on the Côte d'Azur, and his paintings sell for $40,000, $50,000, $100,000, but they're big. He has a studio that's 20 meters by 20 meters by 20 meters, and he has a camera mounted in the ceiling, and he projects down on this big painting surface, and he draws on there, and then he rolls he does it on rolls of paper, not sheets of paper. He rolls it up and then starts painting that 18-inch wide portion. Then he rolls it over and paints that 18, and that's the first pass. And then he goes back, and then he goes back again, and then he goes back again. He never sees the completed painting until it's finished.
Yeah.
But then he sends it to his gallery in New York. He's in like 6 galleries around the world, but the one he's in New York, who still has some of his paintings, you know, they're $60,000, $80,000, $100,000.
Yeah.
So
No.
everybody should know Joseph Raphael.
I will make sure that all the artists you mentioned, I will include that.
That'd be fabulous.
I am very mindful of the time, Lauren. It's past an hour at the moment.
Okay.
I just, do you have a couple more minutes to ask a few more
I, I'm,
quick
I'm,
questions?
I'm yours for as much as you need me, Sunil.
No, no, I don't, I want to be appreciative of your
Oh, I
time.
appreciate it.
So,
I'm enjoying this exchange, and I'm assuming you'll edit out what you don't need.
no, no, no. These are the conversations, random conversations is what is very important. So,
Yeah.
in terms of just random few things, is like the camera you've been mentioning. Well, what camera is it? Is there a particular camera you use?
When I'm
Just on
traveling,
detail.
when I'm traveling, I carry a Nikon that has a built-in 64 millimeter zoom. Gives me lots of flexibility. Has a huge
Yeah.
wide angle, and then that's
Yeah.
in a digital camera that's almost 500. Used to be in a 35, almost 500 millimeter lens. In fact,
Yeah.
you've got to brace it in order to get
Yeah.
a thing. So that's my utility camera. Not terribly expensive, but I pride myself on, and I use that camera also in photographing the still lifes.
Yeah.
But I pride myself on the quality of the images of my paintings, and I get in, and this is a tidbit of information for all of your viewers. If you send in a 6 megabyte image, then you might get the cover of the magazine, or you might get a full sheet. But if you keep sending in 227 low res things,
Yeah.
you're always going to get your paintings reproduced like this.
Sure.
So I always, when I send them to the magazine, it's at least a 4 megabyte image or a 6 megabyte image. I don't send the raw because they don't know how to deal with it. They want it as a JPEG. And then I make sure that I don't send it through AOL, who will denigrate it while it's going. So I send those images through Gmail, who won't denigrate the image.
Sure.
So the answer to your question is that I have a really fine Canon,
Yeah.
and I have a 100 millimeter lens for that Canon, because the people at Canon tells me that that is the most accurate and highest resolution lens that they make. Now the lens is $2,000 and the camera is $4,000.
Yeah. But it pays if you sell one or two paintings, right?
And you only have to buy one. You don't have to buy it every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're running your art as a business, you can deduct all of that from your taxes in most countries. You can't here in the United States. You can't deduct the whole $7,000 for the camera in 1 year. You have to deduct it over 3 or 4 years, but essentially you get it back.
Is there any art material you can't live without? Do you use any of the masking tapes or masking fluids and other things? Is there any few things
I
you can't live
used
without?
I used Daniel Smith masking fluid, and that could be a whole nother conversation. And then I use a particular tape, Nishiban tape from
Nishiban.
Japan.
Okay. I need to look it up.
Nishiban tape. It is a very translucent tape, so you can see even my faintest pencil line through it.
Okay.
But it seals absolutely. You put it on, you cut around the edges, and the edges seal. You never get leakage on that, and then you peel it off. The glue has no impact on the surface of the paper. It's just fabulous. Now, you have to really be careful. Nishiban is a huge industry and a huge manufacturer in Japan. They make tape that you can lift a car with it. They make all kinds of industrial tape that this wide. So you have to get this particular Nishiban tape that comes 1/16 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch, 2 inches, and 4 inches. All of that you can use in masking your paintings.
Okay. I've never. I need to look into this one. I haven't heard about this particular. We just generally use a masking tape like a green frog or a gorilla masking
The
tape.
problem you have there is if I mentioned a name called Joseph Albers. Would you know who Joseph Albers was? He was a color theorist. He's been dead for 20 years now. But Joseph Albers did a whole series of prints called the Homage to the Square. And he taught you that one color on top of another color versus that same color on yet another color are two different colors.
Yeah.
It's the adjacencies of the colors that cause your eye to see it differently. So when you put that green tape on there, what you're painting looks entirely different when you take the green tape off. So you don't know if the paint you just put down has enough saturated color in it, or is it too saturated for the color that's going to be next to it when you peel the tape off. So that's why I like the Nishiban tape. It's a neutral white, a warm white, but it's totally neutral on your painting.
I haven't thought about it. I just
I see it all the time. Yeah.
This episode is so many good tips and tricks. I have to re-listen to all your talk just to make a list of things I need to. What a pleasure. But Laurin, is there? How do people find you?
Well, I have a website. The website is lauringallery.com, and there are several links on my gallery to my email. And my email is laurinmc, LAURINMC @AOL.com. And
Okay.
I promise you I will respond. I may not respond in a timely manner because I may have just gotten on an airplane, gone to an exhibit in London. So,
So, are there any upcoming exhibitions or any of the events you want to tell the
well,
audience?
at the end of March, starting at the end of April, starting on the 24th of April, is the big Fabriano show in Bologna. And this year we will have 1,288 paintings from 88 countries. And so if you really wanted to see what the rest of the world, how the rest of the world paints, it's the only place you can go and have that kind of exposure. And famous artists from all over the world will be doing demos at that. And so, get on a cheap fueling flight and fly down to Bologna. Bologna is a delightful town. It has great food, very inexpensive hotels, and you're going to meet 5,000. Last year we had over 5,000 watercolorists come to that show.
Yeah, that's the biggest event, watercolor. I've been seeing the ads for a while right now.
Yes. It's well worth anybody's time and effort. And all of the major manufacturers of the best art materials are there. Daniel Smith will be there. Escoda will be there. Fabriano paper will be there. All the best quality, and they get samples. One of my legacies in this business is, of course, this little tube of paint. This is McCracken Black. This is a special paint that Daniel Smith formulated after John Cogley, the man that owns Daniel Smith Paint, heard that I mixed my own black. And he called me and he said, "Laurin, we make 5 blacks. Won't one of those work?" And I told him no, why they didn't work. So he called me in a couple of months and he said, I have 3 scientists here all the time at Daniel Smith, and they're there for quality control, which is one of the great things about Daniel Smith. That tube of cerulean you buy 1 year is going to be the same as the cerulean you'd buy 5 years from now. And that's not true of a lot of paints out there today. So he asked me to work with his scientists to come up with a black that met my criteria, and we did. We took about 6 months, And then he called me and he says, "We're ready to go to market. Do you want it to be Laurin Black or do you want it to be McCracken Black?" And I hadn't even thought about it. I didn't even know he was going to have my name. I thought it was going to be, Daniel Smith Black #2. And so we agreed the alliteration of the C's and the K's in the McCracken Black made sense. So, but this has turned out to be one of the top selling tubes of paint in Daniel Smith worldwide.
Wow, what a. But also, you got a killer last name. McCracken is it's a good name for.
Yeah, it's my family is from Scotland. My mother's last name was McLaurin, and my father's name was McCracken. You don't get much more Scot than that.
Yeah. Laurin, what a pleasure. Again, as I said, I don't want to take too much of your time.
Sunil, thank you for inviting me to come and be with you, and I wish you great success with Wet on Wet, and I hope you'll have me back sometime.
I hope to meet you in person sometime.
Oh, I look forward to that. I look forward.
So, yeah, if you're in UK sometime, I'm keeping an eye on your website. Are you active on Twitter or any of the social media just to keep in? Okay.
Not really. I mean, the best way to get me is right now is through email. Now, later in the year, I'll be out there on 2 or 3 of the other sites, but
Sure.
I prefer just to get an email from somebody. I feel a
Yeah.
closer connection if I do that.
Well, that brings us to the end of the conversation with Laurin McCracken. Laurin, thank you so much for sharing your insight, techniques, and inspiration with us today. Your meticulous approach to watercolor and incredible detail has given us a fresh perspective in what's possible with the medium. For our listeners, I hope you feel inspired and take some of Laurin's advice to heart, whether it's focusing on lights and shadows or meticulous planning your composition or simply finding beauty in the ordinary. Don't forget to practice, and key to mastering watercolor is to be kind on yourself during the process. Thank you again to Laurin, and I'll see you again in the next Wet on Wet podcast.